In 2011, a team of researchers made an announcement that should have changed everything we know about human history. Professor Richard Freund of the University of Hartford led a multidisciplinary team of archaeologists, geologists, and geophysicists to a remote marshland in southern Spain. They brought satellite imaging technology, ground-penetrating radar, underwater excavation equipment, every tool modern science has available. And what they found beneath the surface of that Spanish marsh stopped them cold. Circular structures, massive, buried beneath the sediment, arranged in a pattern of concentric rings, matching with extraordinary precision the description of a city written by a Greek philosopher more than 2,000 years ago. They found memorial cities nearby, built by survivors, constructed in the same concentric ring pattern as if the builders were recreating, in stone, on dry land, a memory of the place they had lost. The geological evidence showed a massive tsunami had struck the area thousands of years ago. The sediment layers told a story of sudden, catastrophic flooding, of a coastal civilization submerged beneath the sea in what geologists confirmed was effectively a single catastrophic event. National Geographic aired a full documentary on the findings. The scientific evidence was presented, the case was made, and then almost immediately the story disappeared. No follow-up studies, no mainstream archaeological engagement, no excavation funded, no serious academic debate, just silence. Tonight we ask why, and we look at the evidence that mainstream science has spent decades trying not to discuss. Because Atlantis was not a myth. It was not an allegory invented by a Greek philosopher. It was a real place, a real civilization, destroyed in a real catastrophe. And the story of what it was and what happened to it may be the most important suppressed truth in all of human history. To understand why the discovery in Spain matters so much, we first need to go back to the original source. Atlantis appears in the writings of the Greek philosopher Plato, specifically in two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC. These texts describe Atlantis in extraordinary detail. Not the vague, dreamlike detail of mythology, specific, precise, measurable detail, the kind of detail that does not belong in an allegory. Plato traced the story through a specific chain of sources. He said the account came from the Athenian statesman Solon, who had traveled to Egypt around 600 BC and received the story from Egyptian priests at the Temple of Sas. The priest told Solon they had written records of events going back thousands of years, records the Greeks did not have because Greek civilization was relatively young. And among those records was the account of Atlantis. The priest described Atlantis as a great naval empire, larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined, a territory of enormous scale. It was located, they said, beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient name for what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar, in the ocean to the west, in what we now call the Atlantic Ocean. The city of Atlantis itself was described with remarkable architectural specificity, a central island surrounded by alternating rings of water and land, the rings precisely measured. The city on the central island built on a raised hill, temples, palaces, harbors, bridges connecting the rings, all described in dimensions that Plato recorded with the precision of an engineer, not a storyteller. The Atlanteans were described as a powerful, sophisticated people. They had mastered agriculture, architecture, and navigation. They commanded a naval empire that extended across the Mediterranean. They were militarily dominant, culturally advanced, and according to the account, morally corrupted by their own power and wealth. The destruction came suddenly, in a single day and night, earthquakes and floods. The entire civilization, the island, the city, the empire, sank beneath the ocean. And Plato was explicit. This was not a parable. This was not an allegory for political philosophy. He stated directly that the account was a true story. Alethinos logos, a real account of real events. If you are finding this as compelling as I do, hit subscribe button, like and comment right now. Every week we go this deep into the mysteries mainstream history ignores. You do not want to miss what is coming in the weeks ahead. Now back to the evidence. Scholars have spent 2,000 years arguing about whether to believe him. Here is what those scholars consistently fail to address: the date Plato gave for the destruction of Atlantis. He said it occurred approximately 9,000 years before his time, placing the event around 9,600 years BC. That date, 9,600 BC, is not random. It is not arbitrary. It appears again and again across completely independent lines of evidence. And understanding why that date matters so much is the key to understanding what Atlantis really was. The Spanish marshland discovery in 2011 was not the beginning of the search for Atlantis. Researchers have been looking for centuries, but it may be the most scientifically credible finding yet. Professor Freund's team chose their location based on a simple observation. Plato said Atlantis was beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar. If you sail west from Gibraltar, you enter the Atlantic Ocean. But the area immediately beyond Gibraltar on the Spanish and Moroccan coasts, the area that was coastal land 9,000 years ago, is exactly where the search should begin. Doñana National Park in southern Spain sits just north of the Strait of Gibraltar. It is a vast marshland, a mixture of shallow water, wetland, and buried sediment. And when the team began scanning beneath the surface with satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar, what emerged from the data was remarkable. Circular formations, large, buried deep beneath the marsh sediment, arranged in the concentric ring pattern that Plato had described, alternating areas of what appeared to be structure and open space radiating outward from a central point. The dimensions were not exact. Thousands of years of geological change, sedimentation, and tidal movement would distort any original structure significantly. But the pattern was unmistakable. Someone had built something large and circular in this location, something that had subsequently been buried beneath meters of sediment. Further inland, the team found what they called memorial cities. Ancient settlements built in the same concentric ring pattern, as if the builders were deliberately recreating the layout of a place they remembered, a place they had come from, a template carried in memory and reproduced in stone on dry land because the original was gone. The geological story of the region has supported the archaeological findings in ways the team found impossible to dismiss. The southern Spanish coastline shows extensive evidence of a massive tsunami event, a wall of water striking the coast with devastating force. The sediment layers record it clearly, and the dating of those layers places the event within the period when Atlantis would have been destroyed, according to Plato's timeline. But the Spanish marshland is not the only candidate, and for many researchers, it is not even the most compelling one. In the Sahara Desert of Mauritania in West Africa, there is a geological formation so unusual that it has puzzled scientists since it was first photographed from space in the 1960s. It is called the refuted structure, informally, the Eye of the Sahara. From above, it looks exactly like what it sounds like. An enormous eye, a series of concentric circular rings stretching approximately 50 kilometers across, visible from orbit, one of the most distinctive geological features on the face of the Earth. For decades, it was classified as the remnant of a meteor impact or a volcanic dome. But neither explanation fully accounts for its precise circular structure or its unusual geology. And then researchers began comparing it to Plato's description of Atlantis. The match was extraordinary. Plato described the city of Atlantis as having a central hill surrounded by alternating rings of water and land. He gave specific measurements for the rings. When those measurements are converted from ancient Greek units to modern measurements and compared to the rings of the refuted structure, the correspondence is remarkable. Not perfect, but far closer than coincidence should allow. Plato described freshwater springs within the city, both hot and cold. The refuted structure has freshwater sources in the locations Plato specified. Plato described mountains to the north of the city, protecting it from cold winds. The refuted structure has elevated terrain to the north, matching this description. Plato described Atlantis as being near the coast. Accessible by sea. The Sahara was not always a desert. Between approximately 12,000 and 5,000 years ago, during the period known as the African Humid Period, or the Green Sahara, the Sahara was a lush, fertile landscape crossed by rivers and lakes, with a coastline accessible from the Atlantic Ocean. The refuted structure, currently deep in the desert, would have been a coastal or near-coastal location during this period. And when the Green Sahara ended, when the climate shifted and the desert consumed the landscape, the survivors of whatever civilization existed there would have fled north to the Mediterranean, east to the Nile Valley, west to the Atlantic coast, carrying with them the memory of what they had lost, a memory that eventually reached Egypt, and from Egypt through Solon reached Plato, and from Plato reached us. The date 9600 BC is the thread that connects everything. It is the date Plato gave for the destruction of Atlantis, and it is not a date that exists in isolation. 9600 BC falls within a period scientists call the Younger Dryas, a sudden, dramatic climate event that occurred at the end of the last ice age. Temperatures across the northern hemisphere dropped catastrophically within decades. Ice sheets that had been retreating suddenly advanced again. Species went extinct. Ecosystems collapsed. And then just as suddenly, it ended. The ice retreated again. Temperatures rose. But the world that emerged was different from the world that had existed before. Sea levels that had been lower during the Ice Age rose dramatically as the ice melted, flooding coastal areas that had been inhabited for thousands of years. Civilizations that had built on coastlines found their cities underwater. In our first video, we explored Göbekli Tepe, the mysterious ancient site in Turkey built 12,000 years ago by people who should not have been capable of building it. The evidence we examined suggested a cosmic airburst or impact event around 10,950 BC contributed to the end of whatever civilization built it. That date, 10,950 BC, and Plato's date of 9,600 BC are separated by approximately 1,300 years. Different events possibly, or different stages of the same prolonged catastrophe. An extended period of climate chaos, cosmic impacts, and rising sea levels that gradually destroyed the advanced civilizations of the ancient world. The flood myths of virtually every culture on Earth cluster around this same period. The Epic of Gilgamesh from ancient Mesopotamia, the story of Noah from the Hebrew tradition, the Hindu flood myth of Manu, the Greek flood story of Deucalion, the Aztec flood myths, the Aboriginal Australian flood traditions. Different cultures, different languages, different continents, the same story. A great flood destroyed the world that existed before. A small number of survivors preserved knowledge and restarted civilization. If Atlantis was a real maritime civilization, a naval empire as Plato described, then its destruction in the rising seas of the post-Ice Age world would have scattered its survivors across every coast they had ever sailed. Egypt, the Mediterranean, West Africa, the Americas, Southeast Asia, each group of survivors arriving with the same knowledge, the same mathematics, the same astronomy, the same architectural traditions, teaching the local populations they encountered, establishing new versions of the civilization they had lost, building pyramids because pyramids last, the Pyramid of Giza, the pyramids of Sudan, the pyramids of Mexico, the pyramids of Cambodia, the underwater pyramids of Japan, all of them built within a few thousand years of each other. In the aftermath of whatever catastrophe ended the world before, all of them built by cultures that share the same founding mythology. A great teacher arrived from across the sea after a catastrophic flood and gave humanity civilization. Atlantis was not the only advanced civilization destroyed in that catastrophe, but it may have been the largest, the most powerful, the one whose destruction was so complete and so traumatic that its memory echoed through every culture on Earth for 10,000 years, until a Greek philosopher wrote it down. And yet mainstream academia continues to dismiss Atlantis as fiction. The question worth asking is why? Because the evidence, taken seriously, is not dismissible. The Spanish marshland findings were not produced by amateur treasure hunters. They were produced by a credentialed university professor, leading a multidisciplinary scientific team using the most advanced geological and archaeological technology available. Their findings were specific, measurable, and documented. The reshot structure correspondence with Plato's account is not vague. The measurements match. The geography matches. The hydrology matches. The historical climate data matches. This is not pattern matching from a distance. This is a detailed point-by-point correspondence between an ancient written account and a physical location. The geological evidence of a massive tsunami striking the southern Spanish coast at approximately the right time period is not contested. The sediment layers are there. The dating is there. What is contested is the interpretation, whether this was the event Plato described. So why the resistance? The honest answer is that accepting Atlantis is real, accepting that an advanced maritime civilization existed and was destroyed 9 to 12,000 years ago, requires dismantling the current model of human history completely. The current model says human civilization began in Mesopotamia, in Egypt, approximately 5 to 6,000 years ago. Before that, primitive peoples, hunter-gatherers, cave painters, people without writing, without cities, without advanced knowledge. If Atlantis was real, that model is wrong. Not partially wrong, fundamentally, structurally wrong. There was an advanced civilization, possibly multiple advanced civilizations, thousands of years before the ones we acknowledge. They were destroyed, and what we call the beginning of history is actually the recovery period. The long, slow rebuilding after a catastrophe wiped out almost everything. That conclusion, if accepted, invalidates decades of academic work. It ends careers built on the current model. It requires rewriting every history textbook ever printed. And so, quietly, consistently, without ever engaging the evidence directly, the establishment ignores it. The National Geographic documentary on Professor Freund's findings aired in 2011. It was never widely distributed. It is difficult to find today. The follow-up research that should have been funded and conducted based on those findings never materialized. Not because the evidence was refuted, because it was never seriously examined. Plato wrote about Atlantis 2,300 years ago. He said it was real. He said it was history. He said the Egyptian priest who told the story had written records going back further than any Greek could imagine. For 2,300 years, the world has argued about whether to believe him. Here is what I keep coming back to. Plato was one of the greatest minds in human history. He founded the Academy, the first institution of higher learning in the Western world. His philosophical works have been studied continuously for over 2 millennia. He was not a careless thinker. He was not a man who confused allegory with history. He said Atlantis was real. And now we have in a marshland in southern Spain, in an eye-shaped geological formation in the Sahara Desert, in tsunami sediment layers along the Atlantic coast, in the geological record of the Younger Dryas catastrophe, physical evidence that something happened in exactly the place and at exactly the time he described. Not proof, the honest word is evidence, but evidence that has never been seriously refuted. Evidence that has simply been set aside because what it implies is too large for the current model of history to accommodate. If Atlantis was real, then the world before our world was real. The civilization before our civilization was real. The catastrophe that ended it was real. And everything we think we know about the origins of human achievement is incomplete at best and fundamentally wrong at worst. There is one more piece of this puzzle we have not yet discussed. A piece of evidence so extraordinary, so specific and so difficult to explain that it may be the single most compelling proof that an advanced ancient civilization existed before the flood. A map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. A map that shows the coastline of Antarctica in precise, accurate detail, 297 years before Antarctica was officially discovered by Western explorers. A map that, according to a note written on it by the admiral himself, was compiled from much older source maps. Maps he described as ancient. Maps that should not exist. That is what we explore next week. And I promise you it is the most difficult piece of evidence in this entire series to explain away. Subscribe so you are there when we go deeper. And tell me in the comments, do you believe Atlantis was real? And if it was, where do you think it was? I will see you in the next video.